Welcome everyone to Conversations with the Universe. I hope you're doing well on this January day, a little bit past the full moon. Today I'm speaking with my friend and colleague Tia Russo, who is an energy mindset guide, and she teaches people to connect with their inner landscape so that they can overcome overwhelm and find inner calm. And she is an expert in parts work. So we're going to get right into it. Welcome, Tia. I'm so excited and happy to have you on this podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, obviously, being friends and all.
Yes, I love
Great.
that. We've been
Yeah.
friends and colleagues for 5 years or just over 5 years. And um, I think that witnessing each other, we have seen our own personal evolution and each other's evolution. And it's been really, really special to be in community together and in friendship together for that many years. And just to be able to witness each other and help each other along.
Yep. That's actually one of my favorite things is being able to not only know someone like, oh, hey, I know you, but to witness someone, be like, wow,
Mm.
I've known you as these 1,000 different people. Like that is amazing. That's one of my favorite things to witness. So I'm glad we were able to do that.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think I'd like to start with what is parts work? Because I think that a lot of us have an idea, kind of a somewhat idea of what it is, and we practice it to a degree. Even sometimes intuitively, we practice parts work. But what is it? I'd like to hear from you what it is, and maybe also what are some misconceptions about it?
Okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll just start pretty simply with an overview of what parts work is, right? Using an analogy, I think, is the easiest way to explain something. That way you can kind of see it, kind of feel it, sort of a deal. So for myself, and I'm just going to use my own experience and my own learnings to explain this. For myself, the mind is a place that doesn't really have a lot of structure. It seems to be really chaotic, like there's a lot going on up there.
Mm,
It's hard to, stay on track. It's very easy to get lost with the monkey mind and the rolling thoughts. So parts work is the framework that allows people to understand themselves on an internal world kind of landscape.
mm,
So it's this idea that we all have parts, and all of these parts, like an inner critic, an inner wounded child, or even some protector sides of us, we kind of have all these other little parts, and all
mm,
those parts, they have a role, they have thoughts, they have feelings, they have emotions and preferences and personalities, and they
mm.
have values. So, right, all these parts of us have a function and they serve a purpose. So, your inner critic serves a purpose, your inner child serves a purpose, and all the behaviors that they have also serve a purpose.
Mm.
So with parts work, you're able to get in contact with those parts, listen to their voices, hear their wants and needs, soothe their wounds, and essentially, like in a family, right? And this is the other way
Yeah.
that people call it, is internal family systems. That's like the therapy version of it. They'll call it an inner family. So you have all these internal family members. They don't all get along. They really just don't.
You
There's
don't.
suffering. Yeah, there's conflict in there. And that's why parts work is so amazing, because it gives structure to how do I resolve this conflict? But the conflict is not outside of us, it's inside.
Right.
So it's a tool that helps us bring harmony to that internal landscape where we feel like parts of ourselves are fighting with other parts of ourselves or working against each other. It helps bring harmony so this part can understand this part and realize that they're serving a common purpose. And then we get to the self, and the self is the compassionate core of who we are. And we get to learn how to lead from that place instead of from the parts that are in conflict.
Right. So I really love what you said about them all having value and all having a place within you, but it's not going to be your inner child or your inner, your inner wounding that is going to be leading the show. It's going to be the integrated part of you that understands all these different parts.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
that. So what are
Exactly.
some misconceptions about parts work?
Some misconceptions could be and can be. There's only a couple that I've come across in my experience. So I'm not going to use other people's. I'm just
Okay.
giving I've come across. A lot of times people will start parts work to get rid of a part. Oh, I
Right.
don't want shame. I don't want my anger. Eh,
Mm-hmm.
that's not really what we do it for, right? We do the parts work because this is a whole person. We're a whole person and we have all these parts.
Mm-hmm.
We do parts work so that that part that's on the outside of the house, that
Right.
X over there, the one we've banished to the next,
Mm-hmm.
um, that part gets to be seen and heard and witnessed and understood and brought in. Like, wait a minute. Can I understand this shame part a little better? Can I understand this anger a little better? We're not here to change them. We're not here to get rid of them. We're here to learn how to understand them and bring them home. So we're not villainizing ourselves. So we're not rejecting ourselves. Because by saying, oh, I want to get rid of my shame, I want to get rid of my anger, that's self rejection. So parts work, we're not here to change parts or get rid of them. We're here to bring them home to the self so that we feel integrated as a whole, which basically means in plain language, it's okay for me to have this. It's okay for me to feel this. It's okay for me to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's one misconception.
Yeah.
um, Another misconception, actually, I wrote one down the other day. Let me just grab my notes because I kind of forgot what it was. Oh, yeah, this was a really good one. Um, a lot of times when we do parts or when I do parts work with people, or even just any kind of healing modality, what I come up against is this belief in others that if I start doing this healing work, all this emotional pain is now in front of me. It's in my life and it made more pain.
Mm-hmm.
Actually
Yeah.
doesn't. It just makes us aware of what we stuffed down or what was in a closet that we kind of forgot
Mm-hmm.
about or didn't realize was there. All that increased self-awareness makes us feel connected to that pain and we're actually feeling it now. We're not pushing it away. We're being present with it. So it doesn't create more emotional pain per se, but it shows us what we've been carrying around our entire lives unresolved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it might be something that feels comfortable to do, to not want to see it, because I think that is a natural place that our mind would go to. That if I look at it, it's going to hurt, and I don't, why should I look, why should I subject myself to more hurt? But also, it's interesting what you say about the banishment, because I think we've been taught for several decades, kind of in the therapy, psychoanalysis world, um, that you don't want to feel that. Like that's not necessarily a good part of you that you want to connect with. You want to connect with these other more shiny, sparkly parts of you. And we're going to send that thing to the basement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for that.
And so, and again, it would be a very human response to say, I don't want to look at that part of myself because that part makes me feel ashamed or ugly. I was looking at some parts of myself the other day, kind of in preparation for this. I was trying to think of what are some places where I have banished parts of myself. And I noticed that the feelings of shame and the feelings of kind of like ick, around myself are not even my own beliefs. They're not things that I believe I should be ashamed about, but things that I've inherited or somebody else has told me, well, that's really like, that's just dirty. Like,
Yeah,
that's a dirty part of you, and we're going to put that away.
yeah,
So I think a lot of people feel that.
absolutely. And it's interesting that you say you recognize that these parts aren't necessarily yours, they're inherited.
Mhm.
So that's one of the beautiful things about parts work is it allows us to separate ourselves, right? Separate
Mhm.
self from the part that feels this way.
Mhm.
We as a whole are not this one part. That one part has a feeling. So the
Mhm.
separation, the unblending is what gives us the opportunity to be us, to be who we really are, and be separate from conditioning that's been inherited, things we've learned from our quote unquote caregivers, who cared for us, because that's not true.
Maybe they did.
Yeah, right. Like that.
Let's say they did.
Exactly. So it gives us the opportunity to truly separate from that space.
Mm-hmm.
And in that separation, we get to see, oh, this is who I am. That's conditioning. One of the ways I would say that this works best to work out for yourself or even to try on is when that voice comes up and goes, oh, that's dirty. We should exile that to the basement. Put a face on that voice, because it's not your own face, because it's not your own words. So who would be wearing, what face would wear those words? Because then you'll find it's not you. Because as soon as you put a face to it and you realize it's not you, you realize it's somebody else's voice, somebody else's face, you're like, wait, I don't have to listen. That's them. This is me.
And you're not going to be integrating that into your own inner family of your parts.
Correct.
So I think that that's a really important distinction, because we do want to integrate things that are ours outside of ourselves that we want to bring in, but we also do not want to integrate the things that do not belong to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not all the perspectives that we have and not all the ways we think about ourselves are actually our own. And so I'm glad you brought that to the surface, which is we're not going to bring that stuff in and say, yeah, that's mine.
Yeah.
No, it's not. That
Yeah.
does somebody else. That was taught to you. Your own
Mhm.
stuff feels a little bit different. It's how you view yourself from moments of your life where you had an experience with you. Like embarrassment could have been a firsthand experience when you were younger in school, something happened, you got embarrassed. That part where you're like, no, I'll never be like that again. I will never crack a joke because nobody got it and my face was red. I'm just never going to be funny. Nope, no more funny. That's exiling your humor, right? Because we said humor was bad. It led to embarrassment. We shove humor away. Embarrassment goes with it. Shame comes in, knocks it all down the stairs, and we keep it buried. Humor is ours. Exiled. Embarrassment, that can be exiled, So
Yeah. I can
yeah.
see how that can also come up in a disagreement or an argument between partners or friends or whatever, or within a family, where somebody brings something to your attention and you react as the inner child and shut down and say, nope, I'm never going to speak to you again, or I'm never going to bring up anything vulnerable with you because you didn't, accept it in the way that I wanted you to accept it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's one of the big things that parts work helps with is relational dynamics. Because externally, right, in the face of conflict with another person, all of our internal relational dynamics with ourselves come to the forefront. So, however we learned to connect with people in childhood, right? They call it attachment styles these days. All of that comes forward into our relationship. So, whatever we learned with our parents and whatever we've not distinguished for ourselves then comes forward in that relationship. And it's like those ineffective methods that the inner child has. So the part of you that learned how to shut down and say, I'm never talking to you again. You were probably like 6 or 7 when you learned that. So that defense mechanism that protects that vulnerability of the inner child, that protective part is probably the age of 7. And then it comes out in your adult relationships and you're like, why am I shutting down? This is so immature, but I can't seem to stop. It's because that behavior is the age that it was when you learned how to do that. So the relationship you have to yourself and your parts definitely comes through in relationship, because whatever's unresolved here between you and your parents, it comes through and it comes out. And it's like, that's sensitive. Don't do that. Protective mechanism.
Yeah. And I do understand that protective mechanisms are good in some sense, instances, they really do protect us and they help us through a situation. But when they become crystallized, and I do feel like around the age of 7, a lot of things do become crystallized, and we start carrying that 7-year-old into a lot of situations. So I see the value of the parts work being able to help us see what parts of us are operating in our current system, at whatever age we're at, you know, and I'm still learning um, about my own parts. Like I'm still learning what parts there are and discovering new ones, and then realizing sometimes they just make me laugh because they're so comical.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
This is what we're doing?
Yes. But
I think
that's
that,
part, right? Is being able
yeah,
to like witness yourself and laugh at yourself and with yourself. Like, ah, man, here we are. Okay. So, like you said, that's what we're doing.
yeah.
What?
And I do find that the humor, like in injecting humor into the parts work, can be really beneficial, because if we don't we take ourselves seriously, but not so seriously that we can't have perspective. And I think that, one thing that I love about parts work is that it does provide a lot of perspective. It's like, there's this one road that I travel down every single day, and there's a corner, like, and it just looks like it's a certain view, and it's very flat, and then it goes up the hill, and I all of a sudden come across this really expansive view, and I realize that that view was there all the time, but I couldn't see it. Like I didn't have that perspective. And so parts work to me is a lot of perspective, being able to see something from a different point of view that is helpful to us, instead of, something that is a detriment.
Yes. I like that you brought that up because this kind of goes into the foundation of what parts work really does assist us with. And so perspective is it. How do you get to a perspective shift though, right? And that's kind of where we all want to be is I see things this way and I know there's another way. From 0 to 7, age 0 to 7, your subconscious mind is being made. You have a clean slate, an open notebook. There's nothing written in there, a computer that has no programming. I say this because from 0 to 7, every piece of information that you experience goes in and stays. So whatever you've experienced from 0 to 7, that makes the foundation of your thinking and your perspective. So in order to change or shift your perspective, you would have to have any kind of information that could be opposite to what you learned. You don't get that information until you're 7 to 14 years of age. So you spend the next 7 years accumulating all this information that can contest what you originally learned.
Mhm.
So in order to get to a perspective shift per se and like side yourself, we have to recognize firstly the perspective we do hold and then see what age it is and where it's coming from. And a lot of it is we were not taught how to self-soothe because our parents weren't there helping us deal with our emotions. We were not taught how to connect with ourselves because we were not connecting with our parents, as in our parents were not connecting with us. So if there's a lack of connection and a lack of soothing happening from a young age, how do you know how to shift your own perspective? How could you possibly understand how to be compassionate with yourself and
Mhm.
introduce a new piece of information? Like, well, what if it wasn't like that? What if that worst case scenario didn't happen? What if they didn't hate you? What if they liked you? How would
Mhm.
you do that? How would you know how to introduce something new? You wouldn't.
Mhm.
Take present day self, whatever age we are now, and learn how to soothe and how to connect with the self through parts work. And that's what gives us those new perspectives. And that's
Mhm.
what's beautiful about it is parts work allows you to connect
Mhm.
places you were never connected with from your
Yeah,
parents.
I think that's such a great part of it, is the connection piece and the compassion piece, being
Yeah.
able to even just looking back to my own childhood, being able to see, what happened and that it influenced me and that it taught me something. But I can also unlearn and I can also teach myself something new. And I can have compassion for that part of me that wasn't soothed or wasn't allowed to self-soothe either. Like people was like, don't suck your thumb. Don't suck on your susu. Yeah, but I'm self-soothing. No, but that's bad.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you see like children have a natural instinct why they put their thumb in their mouth because they're trying to get around something that is uncomfortable or hurtful and they need to feel that safety and they're providing it for themselves. Obviously, you're not going to be doing that when you're 45, but
Right, right.
but you learn other self-soothing mechanisms. But in those early years, um, I feel if somebody doesn't show compassion to you for what you're going through, it's going to be really difficult to show compassion to yourself or to learn how to do that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Because if it's not modeled, as in if someone in front of you is not doing it, anywhere from age 0 to 14, if someone is not modeling that behavior, you have no reference for it, you have no data points for it. So
Yes.
how could you possibly learn an action you've never seen? How could you possibly mimic? Because obviously humans, we learn through mimicry, through mirror neurons and everything. So how could you possibly mimic
Hmm.
thing if it's not there? You can't
Yeah.
learn it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like people who have access to a lot of stories or they read folklore or fairy tales or they just read stories where they can read about behavior different from what they're experiencing in their life, then
Yep.
it can be a point of reference where
Yeah.
they can learn, okay, other people do it differently.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try that.
Hmm.
But yeah, so there was another question I wanted to ask you. I have no idea what time it is or how long we've been talking, so we're just going to wing it. What time is it?
Okay. I love it. It's half past.
Okay. What?
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Um, so can you tell me kind of like what drew you into this work and why you love it and what you've witnessed in yourself and others that inspires you?
Yeah. Um, what drew me to this work was my own life experience, I would say. So I've been in and out of therapy pretty much my whole life. So, I mean, with my own past, that is
Yeah.
the natural course of things is I need
Yeah.
some help. This is heavy. Help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that, right? Somewhere along the way, I realized as I did the healing that I did, I got to a point where I was like, you know what? This feels better. I feel better about me on the inside than I ever have in my life. And because I feel this good and I felt so alone then, I don't want other people to feel alone. I
Mm,
want to make this feeling that I have accessible to other people because I found the feeling alone and I didn't want other people to have to go that course alone by themselves to get to this feeling. So I wanted to share it, right?
mhm,
So eventually on my healing path, there were so many voices arguing and I'm in a therapy session and this and that and they're like, "Oh, that sounds like part of you wants this and part of you wants that." And I was just like, "That's exactly the language I want to say. Yes,
mhm,
part of me does and part of me doesn't." And then they were like, "I just want you to know that that's actually a therapy model." And
mm.
wow. So because I have
That's amazing.
internalized shame from like my childhood and the CPTSD that I went through and everything, having a structure so that I can talk to my internal world and hear specifically what one part of me is saying and what matters to them and getting to know myself like that. And then
Mm,
this other part and know what their needs are and what they're trying to do and see their purpose and how they're trying to help me. Having the ability to hold both of those things at the same time, I was just like, this is freedom. And that's what turned the page for me initially is not only can I feel this good with healing work, but I can feel this free. And
mm,
freedom to me meant I can feel this safe inside my body. I can feel this safe with the feelings that I have, as in, if I feel a feeling, Think a thought, it's not going to turn me into a spiral. It's not going to take me out. It's not going to stop my life for days. I can actually feel it, support myself, get used to how it feels, and feel safe enough. Like, as in, I can trust myself with myself to treat myself and to feel how I feel without shaming myself further. So I would say parts work gave me the structure that I wanted so that I could have stability. And that stability gave me the sense of safety I needed. So it was kind of just that initial recognition that I had all these voices arguing. And I was like, wait a minute, I can listen to each one, feel better. So
And
that's,
not feel shame about the voices either. Just to, I love that your therapist gave you the right terminology and that they recognized that this was what was going on.
yeah, it really, really helped. I swear the right words find you at the right time. It's life-changing when you hear what you actually need to hear, because then you can hear it better. Like it clicks in there somewhere, like you know it, but then you understand it on a deeper level. I would also say actually what even before getting to parts work, what led me to discovering parts work in its own little way before I figured out what that term was I remember just after my mom had passed, and I was moving around a ton, working a ton, I didn't like how I felt. And I also didn't like the way people were treating me. And I came across this awareness, obviously self-awareness, opened my eyes very quickly and was like, I want better for myself. I don't want to feel like this and I don't want to be treated like this. And I also don't want to live like this. It was a very rough time of my life. And so that awareness of I want better for my present self is when I started to realize I had selves. I have a present self. I want better for her. And then eventually, through creating actions that made my present better, I realized, oh, I want better for my future self too. So I can handle this because I'm gonna reap the benefits of it eventually. So my present self is working for my future self. And then once I got to this point of like, oh wait, hey, I'm at the future place. I did the thing. I'm here because of my past self. Whoa. So that awareness of past, present, future selves is kind of what really kicked me off. Probably my late teens, early 20s is when I started to really connect with. I have different selves that exist in time, and now I have different selves that exist inside myself, also in time, because I have 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds in there, blah, blah, blah.
So I want to say two things about that. One, that I think a lot of us come into parts work through the younger self, present self, future self kind of model, and which is good because it is an opening, and then we can progress from there. But also, I want to ask you now, when you speak to your previous self or your younger self, do they speak a new language? Are they able to articulate things that they weren't able to articulate before?
It's interesting you say that because yes. So not only can I go and have conversations with, say, like my teenager, when I'm having conversations with her, because my awareness has developed here and now, I can lead better conversations with her and expand her understanding and expand my understanding of her and the compassion towards her, so much so that she relaxes. So my teenager self actually relaxes, and I can feel it in my physical body that the conversation is open. She finally feels understood. She finally feels heard. Now she's not afraid to speak what she needed to speak back when. And she's getting things off her chest that were compacted into her that she couldn't talk about because no one would listen, because nobody asked. So the language does change because I'm changed here now, and I can converse with her in a new way. So she can speak her new or a truth that she's always had in.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good and so beautiful. I realize when sometimes how we fight another person's view of us when we were a child.
Yeah.
I did a little experiment where I I have a view of myself as a 9-year-old, for instance, And I also have a memory of how my mother, my adoptive mother, saw me as a 9-year-old. And she expressed that, like she said, you are such and such, you're this and that. And I always fought it and didn't want to integrate any of that because I thought, okay, well, that's your view and you were mean to me. So obviously anything you say has no value. But
Right.
now, as an adult, having been a mother and now a grandmother, I can actually see that there were parts of me that were like, I can see what she saw. Like,
Really?
I allowed myself to see that this is why I look like that to her.
Hmm.
And there were parts of me that acted in the way she said that I acted. I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to see those parts of myself. So this is different from like somebody being completely wrong about who you are.
Yes.
This is tapping into, is there any of that? Was there any of that within my younger self?
Right.
And can I love that part of myself? So she said, like, you could talk the ear off a donkey and you were always interrupting everything and you were disruptive. And I look back at it and try to see it from a different lens. And I see,
Yeah.
oh yeah, there's a possibility that, you know, that I was seen in that light because of whatever I did. Um, but I don't bring shame into it, and I don't bring the other person's um, feeling about me into it. It's just recognizing that there may have been like a nugget of truth to that, and I
Yeah.
can actually love that person who was acting in that way.
Mhm. Very much yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that, just for the people who are listening to this, one of the things that takes you from a place of, wow, I'm hearing somebody say something about me that I want to reject,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting to a place of, well, I actually love that. I love it for what it is. I can be with
Mm-hmm.
it. There, those are like, we're just going to use the word extreme. Those are two
Mm-hmm.
extremes, right? There's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff in between, a lot of layers, and a
Right.
lot of, I would say, like a gradient, if you will. You don't automatically go from hearing it to then being okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
That took so much layered work for you to get to. And I just want to honor that and say that that's really beautiful, because
Yeah.
that's not just easy. That's not
No.
easy work. That's effortful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just out for everyone that that takes time and effort of being with yourself, connecting with yourself, and taking your judgment, taking your self criticism, taking rejection, taking resistance, taking shame, and doing your best to like ask them to sit down first.
Mm-hmm.
You just, can you wait a minute while I look at this memory? Can you let me see what's actually here? I know you're trying to protect me right now because you don't want me to feel this way, but can you please let me look at this so I can see what this is? So maybe it doesn't have to hurt me forever.
Mm-hmm.
You let things, or you ask things to calm down or sit down for you, and then you pursue the memory and you look at it, you can feel new things. And that's where curiosity can exist, is when it's not under the pressure to be a certain way. So by her saying that you can talk the ear off of a donkey and that you interrupted and that you were disruptive, that
Mm-hmm.
is, again, I'll remind everybody, that's her lens
Yeah.
of you. So she's experiencing something outside of herself that is activating things,
Mm-hmm.
parts inside her. So by you being so free and so open and so excited and so energetic and so sure of yourself,
Yeah.
bothered her. And so she would say those things. And then you heard them and obviously took them in and was like, oh, damn it, I am being disruptive and I'm being this and I'm being that.
Yeah.
Entirely true. The reframe, again, you got to this other extreme of I can accept what this is. The reframe and or the shift in perspective can be the compassion from the self that says, I was really excited as a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
loved talking because I was just so full of life. And I was so excited in conversation that I would just blurt things out.
Yeah.
Was it disruptive? Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Because excitement, I just couldn't
Yeah.
hold it in, all of this energy in this one little body. Oh, right? There's so much
Yeah.
vitality in you.
Yeah.
time to get to that compassionate space of being able
Mhm.
to say that with the self, because you're giving permission, not just compassion. You're giving permission for those parts of you to be how they were, disruptive
Mhm.
maybe, you know?
Yeah, but it not but and
And
it also allows me more compassion for my mom because I see that just like me, she had parts, and those parts, there was a lot of conflict within her, conflict around her, and she responded in the only way that she knew how to respond, which unfortunately didn't land well onto me,
right.
but that's fine with a lot more perspective and like that inner calm that I've been able to cultivate through understanding different parts of me. I can be more calm in how I look at her as well. So that allows that relationship to repair, even though she's passed away. We're still in repair mode, like we're still repairing, still in conversation, still understanding each other. I see more of her humor because, when we kind of within the different dimensions talk to each other, she's kind of funny. And
Yeah.
I never realized that she could be funny before, and I can admire her little quirks and that path to um forgiveness so that I can be free, is a lot smoother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I just, I want to say this for everybody else listening too. Just because someone passes away does not mean that communication stops. I mean, I know you and I
Oh,
know this, but
yeah.
it really doesn't stop. So the fact that you just said you can still work on the repair mode and resolution with,
Mhm.
it's so true. It is,
Mhm. It's
I think,
really, really freeing.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm assuming that you've also seen transformations in your clients through parts work.
Definitely. I'd have to say my favorite. There's a there's a couple of favorites, to be honest. I mean,
Go
I
on.
love this work so much. So the thing that excites me, right, about like guiding people through this is being able to witness someone who's had so much internal conflict, so much like life trauma or just complex trauma, like just so much beating them down, right? And then it turns into their internal dialogue, it turns into their internal world. When I get the opportunity to witness that person have a better understanding of themselves and their internal aspects, um, noticing where they've come from and, oh, this is where this pattern is showing up. This is where this behavior, this distress behavior is coming forward to protect me. And, oh, yeah, this is why I do this. That moment alone, where they get to shift from a perspective of shame and self criticism to compassion and acceptance, that click is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I will have clients cry. I will have clients just release this weight off their shoulders where they feel like all buzzy in their head and light and just it feels like their life changed just because we said something differently that one time.
Mm,
Watching someone go from like internalized shame and self criticism to a moment, their first moment of self compassion and acceptance, which sounds like, well, of course I was going to be like that. I was 5. It's okay. I was like that. I was 5. And it hits them.
mm,
Oh my goodness. It's one of the best things on the planet to witness. Um, Another one I would say is like in the realm of being able to witness people experience things. The that whole concept of going from shame to compassion or shame to acceptance or criticism to acceptance. That's internalized freedom. You
mm,
finally feel a sense of freedom. They feel choice for the first time. They
mm,
realize they don't have to feel the way that they're feeling by thinking what they're thinking. They're finally experiencing freedom from like voices and memories and things that have haunted them their entire lives.
mhm,
Watching someone change or make a different choice or whatever it is, watching a person feel free internally. is one of the most beautiful things, because that's them connecting with who they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
All of these distressed behaviors or coping mechanisms, it's they are connecting with themselves and they feel it. It just like overall parts work, witnessing it with my clients. It's like watching people month over month, year over year, melt their own pain away. And that to me is one of the most rewarding things. And then they get to know themselves, connect with themselves, feel safe and trust themselves in ways that they were never given the opportunity to do so. Because if you're over criticized, if you're overly watched, if you're overly suppressed, you learn not to trust your own voice. So by doing parts work, you learn what your own voice sounds like. You learn how to trust your own nudges. I mean, it starts with the body. You learn to trust when you have to pee. You trust when you're
Yeah.
hungry. Trust when I'm tired, I'm all done, I want to go home. You
Yeah.
start to listen. I don't want to be around this person. I don't like you. I don't like this. I like this and I like that. You
Yeah.
actually trust yourself.
Mm.
That is, oh, I don't know. There's nothing like it. Just watching the additional connection people get to have, the depth of connection, the freedom, compassion. It's life changing. It changes my life to witness it, but obviously it's life
Absolutely. Yeah,
too.
absolutely. And I love that you are the guide. You're not doing the work for them. You're giving them little snippets of information that they can process and see how that changes their inner dialogue. I also love that you said that you have the opportunity to work when you have an opportunity to work with someone, because I think that is really key for us as mentors and as guides to understand that when we work with somebody else, it is an opportunity, it's a gift, it's a luxury.
Yeah.
And then we're in the right mindset when we're working with someone, when we see it as an opportunity. And I also love that what you said about choice, because a lot of times when the parts aren't integrated and we're in conflict with all of our parts, we don't feel like we have a choice.
No.
We don't think we can make new decisions or see ourselves in a new way, or we can choose something that is better for us because we're stuck in that. Like so many people have said, that wasn't modeled to me and I don't know how to do that. So I'm going to keep choosing the same relationships or the same patterns. But that's not true. Like we can shift to a new understanding and we can know that we can make different choices. And those choices are everything. I mean, they're the things that keep us
It,
alive. There are times when people don't want to be alive anymore because they don't understand that there is a choice or
yeah.
that they can integrate those parts that are in conflict all the time. So I think that the work that you're doing is super, super important. And I love the way you do it. You have a lot of clarity. You speak in a very informed and clear way that allows, I know that when I listen to you, because I watch all your videos,
Thank you.
um, that I'm taking something away every single day that is helping me to understand myself on a new level. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how old you are or where you get to in life, you can always still learn something new about yourself. And there's always parts that are looking for integration. I don't think we're ever finished with that. So having the understanding that we can do the parts work is really, really big.
Yes. Yes, it really is, in all honesty. I want to circle back to the two things that you picked up on. The fact that I said it's an opportunity to work with people. It genuinely is, because there has to be so much trust and
Mhm.
respect to allow someone into your internal space and have them impact you. And so it's a lot of vulnerability. And so the person
Mhm.
you're choosing as your coach or your guide to come in and assist you with your internal landscaping, like that's not a relationship to take lightly. So I
Mhm.
do see it as an honor and an opportunity, because it's not a guarantee. It genuinely is a gift when somebody says, I trust you enough to not be malicious and to not be manipulative and not steer me, into the ground. So I don't take it lightly when somebody chooses to work with me. It's an honor to be able to be that close to someone in their internal world. The other thing I wanted to speak on was choice. It sounds really beautiful when we talk about increased choice. You'll feel like you have choice. People don't know what stops them from being able to choose. Like you said, the internal conflict that they have because it would not, nothing else was modeled to them. That limitation of seeing only so much with interactions between people, that limited experience or limited viewpoint makes you feel like you can't choose. One of the biggest things that stops choice is shame.
Mm.
So when we recognize that, and shame has a certain language. So once we have the ability to hear the language of shame and how often it plays on a loop in our head, like I should, I have to, I need to, I'm supposed to, something's wrong with me, I'm fucked up, I always fuck up. That's the language of shame. All of those pieces of language, those phrases, those don't feel like choice. So anybody who's experiencing those phrases, when you learn to hear the voice of shame, to learn how to speak with it and support it, that's when you'll feel like you have choice. And so I know speaking about choice can trigger shame, and then shame will say, you don't have any choice. It can kind of feel shitty. But I just wanted to point out that shame is one of the biggest things that interrupts our sense or feeling, felt sense, choice in our lives because we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge piece. Definitely a huge piece. I've experienced it so many times, and it's not always easy. It's nice to have a guide, you know, to help you shuffle through the shame. Yeah, because there's big chunks of shame, like really big chunks where you're like, well, I was able to get through those other pieces of shame, but this one's just, you know, a big old mountain, and I'm not going to climb that mountain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's I'm not going to climb that mountain alone, so I'm just not
Yeah.
climbing
Yeah.
until we find the guide and we're like, oh, you're climbing that mountain, and you
Yeah.
have an entire list of supplies we need. You know the path. Sounds like you know what you're talking about. I think I'm going to follow you. That sounds
Yeah.
good. So we
You
kind
have,
of feather up the mountain.
yeah, you've got snacks. I'm going with you.
Exactly. You've got the snacks. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
You've trapped me. Yeah.
So do you see this as something that, well, I know the answer to this question because I know you.
Yeah.
I know that you have done your own parts work, and that makes you so much more capable to help others with their parts work because you really understand it on a personal level, and it's not theory. It's not something you picked up in a book. I know you've done this work.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and it's really, um, I love that. I love that it's a lived experience for you, that it's not theory, and something that sounds like it might help a client. You know what it's going to do.
Yes. Exactly. I didn't read a book on how to ride a bike and then tell people, well, if you just do this, you'll be able to ride the bike of life.
Yeah.
No, I was taught by life. Hey, you have parts. And then I rode the bike. I got on the bike, didn't have the book, rode the bike first, and
Yeah.
then figured out all the things in between that. So experience wise, yes, I've done this for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes this so powerful is because I believe in it so deeply because it did change my life.
Mm-hmm.
Internalized shame says something's wrong with me. Parts work now says it's okay to be me. It's okay for me to have this. It's okay for me to feel this way. All that compassion is the antidote to that internalized shame that I had and have. It didn't go away, right? But I know how to soften to it. And so I know how to lead people through the experience of I have this part. I don't want this part. I don't want to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Compassionately treat ourselves well enough for that to exist first? Can that be okay first? Can we feel the resistance first? Can we just start slow? Can we just be gentle first? So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a theory. for me. It's something I deeply believe in because it changed my life and I've witnessed it change many of my clients' lives. And I say the word change, but it's like all little micro shifts, like small
Mm-hmm.
shifts that made the greatest change in their life. So it's not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I changed who I am. No, because the parts still exist. The struggle still is there. But you
Right.
know how to support it better. You know how to treat yourself better.
Yeah.
You feel more equipped, more
Mm-hmm.
able to handle it. That's
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing I learned from parts work is now I know how to handle what's going on inside me. And I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to do that before.
Mm-hmm. I love that you say that it's always there, but you learn how to be in relationship with it and in more compassion with it. And it's just like the big befriending of yourself,
Yes.
becoming friends with yourself so you don't have to ban anything. You don't have to, um, because sometimes the word change,
Yeah.
you know,
Ugh,
there's a tension there with the
exactly.
word change, but yeah, I love that whole befriending yourself and yeah, being your own best friend and knowing that it's like with any other friend, there's going to be things. Nobody's perfect. There might come up personality, disagreements or whatever, but it's okay. That's just, you're just going to flow with that.
Yeah.
So I love
And
that.
you can flow with that with another person because you're flowing with that with yourself, which is
Mm,
like say that any particular day I have a lot of shame with me that day. Like I am just feeling down on myself, blah de blah. I bring my shame with me. I don't tell my shame, hey, you have to piss off. You need to get out of here. I can't stand you. I'm not going to shame my shame. I'm going to tell my shame, like,
yeah.
okay, get in the teacup. Let's go. You're coming
Yeah.
with me today. It doesn't stop me from doing the actions. You're just
Hmm.
gonna come with me. And I'm going to let you be there while I do the thing. You're going to sit on my desk and I'm going to talk to you because I know you need me. Because you're coming up, you're worried about something, you're afraid of something, you have these feelings and thoughts. Let me just sit you here so I can talk to you.
Hmm.
That's probably one of the things that I would want people to know the most about parts work is I'm going to say a big word. Y'all can Google this later. It helps us to anthropomorphize our insides to an external thing. Simple speech. It allows us to take a part of ourselves from the inside and
Hmm.
outside of our bodies and say, hey, it's okay for you to be ashamed today. It lets us
Hmm.
take from the in and put it outside of. So we realize this is me. Part of me is having a hard time. And then
Hmm.
treat it like this little being outside of us. Or sometimes people imagine my shame part is like 9 years old when they first experienced a ton of shame. And I remember the year and I remember all the memories. And this is when I felt so like, oh, something's just wrong with me. Everything's wrong with me. Nobody likes me. I had no friends. That 9 year old self. Sometimes it helps us to imagine our 9 year old self walking in the door, standing in front of us and moping.
Hmm.
I don't like you. I don't want to be seen. Don't let anyone see me. Why are you doing this to me? If you let your teen be a person, it helps you relate with the person that's in the room with you instead of being
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm having shame. I'm ashamed of myself. This is who I am. If you anthropomorphize it, if you put it outside of yourself into its own living being and let it walk in the room and pretend that it's standing in front of you, you can talk to it like it's a being outside you and treat it with so much more compassion because we don't treat ourselves with compassion first. We treat other with compassion.
Hmm.
If you put it outside you, it's a little easier to, I would say, treat better because it's not
Hmm.
you. Now it's something outside you. So
Yeah.
yeah, parts
Yeah.
don't go away. We learn how to connect with them, create relationship
Yeah.
with them, bring them with us. And then the moment that they're seen, they're heard, they're talking to us, guess what happens? Ah, whole nervous
Yeah.
system. It's like, oh, I guess it's not that bad. You're here with me. You're gonna keep me safe. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
sometimes take different parts of myself with me on a hike, and I'll say, okay, I'm taking you, you, and you that I'm struggling with right now. We're going to go for this hike. And I don't necessarily talk to those parts, but I let them do their own thing. Like some of them like lag way behind, some run ahead, some are like sniffing all the flowers, some are kicking the rocks, you know,
Hmm.
and I allow them just to be themselves. And then by the time I'm finished my hike, I feel like we're all have been allowed to be um, ourselves, just
Yeah.
just be who we really are. And my partner said, you can't tell people you take parts of yourself on walks."
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "Well, I can. I can't say it."
Yeah, I do. And you know what they say? They go, "Oh, good for
Yeah,
you." Like, I know,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can only say that to certain people.
Yes. Yes, yes. Discernment is key because
That's
some people
right.
will try to put you in a loony bin.
Right.
Unfortunately, I do the same thing. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have very similar methods of how we talk to ourselves and how we work with ourselves.
I think so too.
Anyway, it's been incredibly invigorating and I've learned so much. And as I always learn so much from you, and I'm so glad that you agreed to come on the podcast and share your wisdom. And um, I'm going to, for anybody who's listening or watching, I'm going to link your Instagram so people can have a link to your the things that you share
Thank you.
every day. And yeah, thank you so much, Tia. It's been
Thank you for having me.
amazing.
Well, yeah.
So,
Anything have me on, you let me know.
oh, I don't you worry. I will. Thanks so much, Tia. And
Thank
thank you
you.
everyone for watching and for being part of the podcast. I appreciate you so much. Bye for now.